You've probably seen ads on television hailing natural gas as the clean-burning transition fuel.
American shale basins contain an ocean of natural gas.
The method of gas drilling they use is called hydraulic fracturing, or fracking. It blasts a mix of water and chemicals 8,000 feet into the ground. The fracking itself is like a mini earthquake. The intense pressure breaks apart the rock and frees up the gas. In order to frack, you need some fracking fluid, a mix of over 596 chemicals, from the unpronounceable to the unknown to the too well-known. The brew is full of corrosion inhibitors, gelants, drilling additives, biocides, shale control inhibitors, liquid breaker aids, viscosifiers, liquid gel concentrates.
Why is hydrofracking raising such concerns? The materials used for hydrofracking don't biodegrade. Once they're in the environment to stay. If just 2% of these hundreds of thousands of wells go south in some way or another, that's thousands upon thousands of incidents, and I invite questions about that.
What Mr. Appleton is doing is searching for a problem that does not exist, because looking at all these other examples in all these states, there has not been a problem with hydraulic fracturing.
In less than a decade, the area became rapidly industrialized, with over 5,000 wells drilled. So going to Garfield County is like looking into the future of any area slated for drilling. It's also the subject of the first preliminary study on the health effects of gas drilling. 7 medical researchers from the University of Colorado studied the air and the water, finding acute problems from toxic emissions from gas development. So when I got calls from people in Garfield County, there were calls from people who had severe health problems.
This is Karen Truelove. She started getting massive headaches, getting really ill, feeling sick, and she said it got so bad that she didn't even plan her days anymore. She just tried to get through them. Then my friend Rick has benzene in his blood, toluene.
Tara was speaking for her friends that couldn't speak for themselves mostly, because of non-disclosure agreements. People who were in lawsuits or who had settlements that stipulated that once they received their money, they could no longer go public with their stories. I kept getting in car after car, hearing symptom after symptom. My first day in Garfield County, I did 16 hours worth of interviews, and then finally, I got a chance to sit down with Theo Colborn, winner of 5 Rachel Carson Awards, a Time Magazine Environmentalist of the Year, and Congressional Fellow. Her accolades are too numerous to count.
We've begun to look at what's being used to drill a well, data that the government should be collecting but isn't collecting. We've been able to get our hands on some of that.
Because of the exemptions, fracking chemicals are considered proprietary, like the special sauce for a Big Mac or the secret formula for Coca-Cola. The only reason we know anything about the fracking chemicals is because of the work of Theo Colborn. By chasing down trucks, combing through material safety data sheets, and collecting samples, Theo has identified 596 different chemicals in 900 chemical products.
Every environmental law we wrote to protect public health is ignored. But the neurological effects are very insidious.
3 years ago, I started getting really dizzy.
At first, you may just have headaches. Then the next thing you might have ringing in your ears.
I thought I had an inner ear infection. I went to my doctor and she's kind of, your ears are clean.
Or you may be a little disoriented, or you may feel a little dizzy.
So they sent me down for a CAT scan.
But eventually, you may feel what is called peripheral neuropathy. And when you get to this stage, you have irreversible brain damage.
For the last 4 years, I have these lesions in my brain. Don't know where they came from.
You may begin to get swelling.
I hurt everywhere in my body. My legs, my feet, everywhere.
Your extremities, especially the arms and the legs.
I couldn't move. I couldn't reach my face to eat.
And never know where the pain is going to be. The pain can be excruciating.
You get pains all over your body. You don't know why you're getting the pains, and then they come and go, and they'll show up in another part of your body.
I go out and I talk to the bosses, you know, the men who are overlooking what's going on, and even their supervisors. They are so surprised. They look at me as if I'm crazy when I ask them, well, where are they mixing in the chemicals now? Oh, we're not using any chemicals. Well, if we are, they're safe. Even the bosses don't know what they're telling those men to handle. And once the public hears the story, and they'll say, well, why aren't we out there monitoring? We can't monitor until we know what they're using. There's no way to monitor. You can't.
Studies and surveys by GWPC, EPA, and IOGCC over the last 11 years have found no real credible threat to underground drinking water from hydraulic fracturing. Studies and surveys by GWPC, EPA, and IOGCC over the last 11 years have found no real credible threat to underground drinking water from hydraulic fracturing.
Let's clear this up. I'm not here under the authority of EPA speaking on behalf of views that agency represents.
I will put Weston Wilson not speaking on behalf of the EPA, although he works for the EPA.
In 2004, the EPA was investigating water contamination incidents due to hydraulic fracturing across the country. But a panel rejected the inquiry, stating that although hazardous materials were being injected underground, EPA did not need to investigate. Weston Wilson, a 20-year veteran of the EPA, wrote a letter to Congress objecting. He also noted that on the peer review panel that authored the report, 5 of 7 members appeared to have conflicts of interest and would benefit from the EPA's decision not to conduct a further investigation.
They came out with the patently ridiculous conclusion. They had showed it was toxic and then said it wasn't a risk. It made no sense, and only in an Orwellian world would you accept that.
From 1995 until 2000, when he became vice president, Dick Cheney was the CEO of Halliburton. One of the first things he did when he became vice president was to form what was known as the Energy Task Force. They met up to 40 times with industry leaders. They only met once with members from environmental groups. The Energy Task Force and a $100 million lobbying effort on behalf of the industry were significant in the passage of what's called the Halliburton loophole to the Safe Drinking Water Act, which authorizes oil and gas drillers exclusively to inject known hazardous materials adjacent to underground drinking water supplies. It passed as a part of the Bush administration's Energy Policy Act of 2005.
So all science at that point stopped?
All science, all data, everything stopped. We were appalled about burying this kind of, maybe no pun intended, but burying this secret that it was known to be toxic. You know, when the president says to its bureaucracy, don't investigate, expedite things for industry, we do those jobs well too. One could characterize this entire industry as having 100 years of history of purchasing those they contaminate. So they purchase the land, and often with an agreement of secrecy of somebody that's alleging they've been contaminated by oil and gas production. So the industry itself has that type of practice.
The corporate business model is to come into an area, develop it as fast as you can, and if you trash anything, you make the people who you impact prove it, argue it in a court of law, and the last person standing gets bought off and you move on.
You're saying it's the industry itself should be proving it and not the people.
This is America. We shouldn't be assuming that corporations can keep a secret, especially when they're practicing in our backyard. So the onus should be on the industry to prove to the government that their practice is benign and not that assumption. What you could be picking up from these citizens is what we should be investigating, but we're not. And don't assume since Obama got elected that something's changed at the EPA yet in that regard. We're still asleep at the wheel. Even if it weren't true, they deserve an investigation. They're citizens of the United States. And they certainly don't deserve to be exposed to secret chemicals. It's un-American.
Each time they drill a well, they need between 1 and 7 million gallons of water. Each time they go back and frack an existing well, they need an additional 1 to 7 million gallons of water. They can frack a well up to 18 times in its life. They started out west, New Mexico, Colorado, Texas, Wyoming, Oklahoma, and in the south, Arkansas, Louisiana, Alabama. 450,000 wells, times 18, times 1 to 7 million gallons, is something like 40 trillion gallons of water, all of it infused with the 596 chemicals in the fracking fluid.
Studies and surveys by GWPC, EPA, and IOGCC over the last 11 years have found no real credible threat to underground drinking water from hydraulic fracturing.
Sometimes it bubbles and hisses when it comes out. So I highly recommend that you do.
Drink it?
I won't drink it.